Welcome to LDSBookReviews.com. My name is Ryan Daly, and today we're going to be reviewing Adam Nicholson's God's Secretaries, the making of the 1611 King James Version of the Bible. Now, I didn't really love this book, but it actually wasn't really what I was looking for. I think it was probably very well written for what its intention was, but it really wasn't my thing. I'm going to give this 2 stars, and particularly for the LDS community, it probably doesn't add a lot of value. Now, initially, I was reading this because I wanted to better understand the making of the King James Version of the Bible, more explicitly, the printing of the King James Version of the Bible. I have recently become somewhat interested and obsessed with the various editions of the early Bibles, particularly the English editions, and I was curious as to the printing and the funding and things like that. With that being said, this does cover some of that. But more or less, this actually covers the political rhetoric that was taking place during the time that King James took over for Queen Elizabeth, and his intention of unifying the kingdom, the king of the United Kingdom, with a common theme, a common language, as well as a common Bible. So King James, just to give a little background, entered the time when there was a lot of conflict. Okay, if you'll remember earlier in the 1539, King Henry printed the first authorized English edition of the Bible called the Great Bible, and it was terribly translated. In fact, it really wasn't even accepted to be a solid, good translation of the Bible. This is a little history lesson, right? And he only used just a couple of translators to really just push it out and make it happen, to give him some authority in the Church of England so that he can get his divorce. Okay, from there, we jump about 20 years, and the Puritans pop up kind of as a separatist sect, and they actually retranslate the Bible in English, called the Geneva Bible, in 1560. And the Geneva Bible is slated entirely in a Calvinistic mindset, totally biased towards that. Now, Queen Elizabeth responds with the Bishop's Bible 8 years later in 1568, which is entirely opposite type of translation and is extremely swayed and biased at this point. King James comes on about 40 years later, early 1600s, actually 1604, and he commissions the King James Bible to be printed. And he does something that the other English editions didn't do, which was, instead of doing just a couple of translators just to crank it out, he actually commissioned 60 translators over 5 different companies of 12 in order to make sure that they were actually translating to the best of their ability, and then to have each group check the other group's work in an effort to kind of bring a sense of unity, so that he could actually try to unify both the Puritans, the Church of England, and even the Catholic organization, who at the time were somewhat terrorists, firebombing various churches and things like that. So you can try to bring peace and unity. So he said, I wanted a Bible in the common language, right? Which is ironic because it really wasn't actually printed in the common language. And so this book actually covers a lot of the political experience that takes place through the 11-year or the 7-year translation process, up to its eventual publication in 1611. Now, the King James Version of the Bible is arguably the most influential publication in the history of the world. It influenced Christianity for hundreds of years and is still considered the standard by which all other Bibles are compared to. Now, that's not to say that there aren't more accurate translations since then. It's just to say that it's still the standard by which it's compared to, even if it is more accurate. Does that make sense? And so it's also a very unique time frame for the LDS community because being able to put it in the cadence of it's not Old English technically, but the English that was used at the time, the non-standardized English, was able to bring some of the poetic forms of both the Greek and Hebrew into play. Whereas today, the extremely accurate translations lose some of that poetic form. It's not perfectly preserved in any English form, but King James Bible is definitely an interesting read and definitely influential. However, God's Secretaries, the making of it, really just wasn't interesting to me. Adam Nicholson did a good job in writing it. He crafted and weaved an interesting story. It bounced around a lot to me. I really didn't care about some of the characters and authors, and how they funded this or what they did here. And the few things that I was interested about the publication of the actual Bible was very short, very small, and breezed through really quick. So again, 2 stars. I'd go ahead and just skip over this for most of the LDS community. Even if you're interested in learning more about the King James Version of the Bible, you're probably not tons interested in like the political bickering back and forth between everyone. Um, if you are, this is your book. It's just, I love source material and history, and this just didn't do it for me. So with that, I'm going to leave that with you. Uh, Thank you for watching ldsbookreviews.com. And if you would like to learn more, go ahead and hit ldsbookreviews.com or watch some of these other videos. Thanks.